Welcome to Mastermind Conversations, a Pro Insights podcast, powered by Geek in New York, where we don't just talk, we geek it. We break down complex topics, research from trusted sources, and bring your expert insights, real-life stories, and actionable tips, all in a clear and engaging way. So get ready, it's time to geek it with Mastermind Conversations.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive that just might shake up how you see your love life.
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
It is, because we're diving deep into the world of conflict resolution for couples.
The stuff every couple out there wants to master, right?
Exactly. And trust me, this is a deep dive you won't want to miss. It's part one of a three-part series brought to you by Resilient Couples Coaching, Strengthening and Deepening Love with CBT and Mindfulness.
We're going to give you a whole toolkit to understand arguments with your partner in a new light.
And hopefully by the end of part three, you'll even be able to transform those clashes into something that makes your bond even stronger.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Absolutely. And let's be honest, who out there hasn't had at least a little disagreement with their sweetheart?
It's totally normal.
Exactly. It's all part of being in a relationship. What we're here to learn is how to navigate those conflicts in a way that actually brings you closer.
That's the key, isn't it? Not letting those disagreements tear you apart, but using them to build something even stronger.
Exactly. But how do we do that? I mean, sometimes those arguments can feel so intense, so personal.
Well, a lot of it comes down to understanding what's really going on beneath the surface of those disagreements. One of the most fascinating places to start is this idea of the unconscious marriage.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but to be honest, it sounds a little freaky. Like, are we saying that we're secretly controlled by our subconscious when we choose a partner?
Well, maybe not completely controlled, but definitely influenced in ways we don't always realize.
Okay, I'm listening.
The basic idea is that we're often drawn to partners who, without even realizing it, embody some of the negative traits of our parents or early caregivers.
Wait, so you're saying I picked my partner because they're just like my mom? That doesn't sound very romantic.
It's not about being exactly like them, but more about recognizing familiar patterns.
I'm not sure I fault.
Okay, imagine your dad was super critical and you always craved his approval. Well, you might end up with a partner who's also pretty critical without even consciously realizing it. And then bam, suddenly you're triggering those same old feelings from childhood.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. So it's like we're subconsciously trying to work through those old childhood hurts in our adult relationship.
Exactly. It's like we're trying to rewrite that old script from childhood, hoping this time we'll get a different ending, a happier one.
And does this lead to that infamous power struggle phase that I've heard so much about? You know, where couples just can't seem to stop butting heads?
Yes, that power struggle is a really common stage, but it can also be quite destructive. This is where those old patterns really start to clash, and those deep-seated fears we all carry, like the fear of abandonment or even death, start to bubble up.
Whoa, death. Really? That seems a little extreme, doesn't it?
It might sound dramatic, but those primal fears are often lurking beneath the surface. Think about it. If your partner threatens to leave, it can trigger that deep-seated fear of being alone, which on a primal level can feel like a threat to survival.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this ties together. So if we're unconsciously playing out these old dramas, how do we break free?
The first step is simply becoming aware of it. Recognizing these patterns, both in yourself and in your partner, is huge. It's like switching on the light in a dark room.
So once I see those patterns, what's next? How do I actually change them?
Well, one really powerful way to shift those negative cycles is something called the caring days exercise.
Okay, caring days. That sounds warm and fuzzy. I like it. Tell me more.
It's all about doing kind things for your partner, even when you're not feeling particularly loving at that moment.
So like bringing them coffee in bed, even if they left their dirty socks on the floor again.
Exactly. It might sound too simple to be true, but trust me, it can be revolutionary. It's about retraining your brain.
Retraining my brain. I'm intrigued.
Well, those old patterns are so ingrained that our brains automatically react in certain ways, even if those reactions aren't helpful. By consciously choosing to do something caring for your partner, you interrupt that old circuitry.
You're creating a new positive association with your partner.
Exactly.
I'm basically hacking my own brain to create more love.
I like that way of putting it.
Sign me up. But does this really work? Is there any evidence to back this up?
You know, it's really interesting. Research actually shows that a consistent pattern of positive interactions in a relationship is crucial for resolving conflicts. It's even more important than all those fancy active listening techniques people talk about.
Really? I'm always hearing that active listening is the key to good communication.
Oh, it definitely has its place, but think about it this way. Imagine you and your partner are in the middle of an argument, and suddenly they do something truly thoughtful for you.
I'd probably be caught off guard.
Right. And how would that change the dynamic?
I think it would soften my stance and make me feel more open to hearing them out.
Exactly. Those positive actions build up a reserve of goodwill and make it easier to navigate those inevitable bumps in the road.
Okay, I'm totally on board with the Caring Days exercise. But what about the fact that men and women seem to approach conflict in such different ways?
That's a great point. The classic men are from Mars, women are from Venus scenario, right?
It can be so frustrating, like we're speaking different languages sometimes.
And it's definitely real. It's true that men often withdraw into their caves when things get tense.
While women want to talk it out and find a solution right away.
And it's crucial to be aware of something called flooding during arguments, which can really derail communication.
Flooding? What's that?
Think about that feeling of being overwhelmed and attacked during an argument.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
Your heart races, you might feel flushed, and rational thought completely goes out the window. That's flooding. It's a physical response.
So basically we're in fight or flight mode.
Exactly. And when we're flooded, it's almost impossible to be empathetic or see things from our partner's perspective.
So what do we do? How do we handle flooding, especially when it seems like both partners are getting swept away?
Well, the first step is to simply recognize it. See the signs of flooding in yourself and your partner.
So things like suddenly speaking more loudly or getting defensive.
Those are all cues that it's time to take a step back and let things cool down a bit.
So taking a break when things get heated is key.
Absolutely. Taking a break, or what's often called self-soothing, is essential.
So does that mean walk people away in the middle of an argument? What if that makes things worse?
It's not about storming off in anger. It's about communicating clearly to your partner that you need a moment to calm down before continuing the conversation.
Okay, so something like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Can we take a 20-minute break and come back to this?
Exactly. It's all about clear and respectful communication.
And what do we do during that break?
The goal is to calm your nervous system down and shift out of that fight or flight mode.
So no scrolling through social media to distract myself.
Not really. Think about things that actually calm you down. Deep breathing, listening to calming music, taking a walk in nature.
Anything that helps you feel centered and relaxed.
Exactly. The key is to remember that conflict isn't about winning or losing.
So it's not about proving a point.
Not at all. The most successful couples see conflict as an opportunity to create a positive interaction.
Something that actually strengthens the relationship.
Right. It's about shifting your mindset from attack and defend to a more collaborative approach.
And I bet that's easier said than done sometimes.
You're absolutely right. It takes practice. But one of the most powerful tools in that shift is learning to see things from your partner's perspective.
Yeah, the power of perspective. But sometimes that feels impossible when you're in the heat of the moment.
It definitely takes effort. Think about it this way. When we're in conflict, we tend to get stuck in the box, as they say.
In the box, what does that mean?
It's just a metaphor for that feeling of being trapped in our own heads, seeing things only from our own limited viewpoint.
We get so focused on our own justifications and who's to blame.
Exactly, and we completely forget that our partners are also complex human beings with their own valid experiences.
It's like we're wearing blinders, unable to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. Shifting our perspective is like taking off those blinders. It's about trying to understand where our partner is coming from, even if we don't agree with them.
So it's about practicing empathy, even when it feels hard.
You got it. And, there's a really powerful story that illustrates this beautifully. It's about a man named Mordechai Levon.
Who's that? What's his story?
Well, to make a long story short, he was falsely accused of something he didn't do and suffered greatly as a result. Later on, he happened to meet someone who'd played a role in that injustice.
Oh, that must have been an awkward encounter.
You can say that again. But instead of lashing out or seeking revenge, Mordechai chose a different path.
He chose empathy. Wow, that's incredibly difficult to do.
It is. But in that moment, he was able to see the other person not as the enemy, but as a human being, someone who had also experienced pain and loss.
So it's a reminder that even when we feel deeply wronged, there's always another way to approach the situation.
Exactly. And here's something important to remember. Creating lasting peace in our relationships isn't just about resolving those external conflicts we have with our partners.
Oh, so it goes even deeper than that.
It does. It's also about addressing our own inner conflicts.
Our inner conflicts. What do you mean by that?
We all carry around emotional baggage from our pasts.
Unresolved hurts, limiting beliefs, and that inner critic who never seems to quiet down.
Exactly. All of that can spill over into our relationships and fuel those negative patterns we were talking about.
So it's like our own internal battles are playing out on the relationship stage.
Precisely. And until we address those inner wounds, those patterns are likely to keep repeating themselves.
Wow, this is giving me a lot to think about. It sounds like conflict resolution is about so much more than just learning communication techniques.
It really is.
It's about deep inner work and cultivating compassion for ourselves and our partners.
That's a great way to sum it up.
So much to unpack. Can we do a quick recap of what we've learned so far before we dive into part 2?
Definitely. We started with the idea of the unconscious marriage and how we often choose partners who reflect unresolved issues from our pasts.
Right, and how those unconscious patterns can lead to that power struggle phase where those fears of abandonment and, surprisingly, even death can come into play.
We also talked about the power of positive interactions in building a foundation of goodwill, and how those caring days can actually shift our perceptions of our partners.
And how can we forget about those fascinating gender differences in communication and how important it is to recognize the signs of flooding when those arguments get heated?
We've covered a lot of ground.
We sure have. But don't go anywhere, because in part 2 of this series, we're going to get even more practical.
We'll explore specific tools and strategies for resolving conflicts and created a more peaceful and fulfilling partnership, all thanks to Resilient Couples Coaching.
Make sure to tune in for part 2.
It's going to be good.
Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into conflict resolution. In the last part, we talked about those caring days, but honestly, I'm still a little fuzzy on the details.
Sure, happy to explain more. Think of it as a personalized love language boost. Where you and your partner make a list of specific actions that make each other feel loved and appreciated.
Okay, so I might put something like surprise me with takeout from my favorite Thai place on my list.
Exactly. And your partner might put give me a 10-minute back massage without me asking on theirs.
I like the sound of that.
The key is that these actions genuinely speak to your partner's love language and that you commit to doing them regularly, even when you're not feeling particularly romantic.
So it's not about waiting for those warm, fuzzy feelings to magically appear before I act lovingly toward my partner.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious choice to nourish the relationship no matter what mood you're in. And the cool thing is, acting lovingly often ends up creating those warm, fuzzy feelings anyway.
So it's a win-win.
I like to think so. And it helps break those tit-for-tat patterns that can pop up during the power struggle phase.
Right, where it becomes a battle of who did what for whom.
Exactly. This actually reminds me of something we talked about earlier, understanding each other's love languages.
Right, it's not just about doing nice things in general. It's about doing things that your partner actually appreciates.
Absolutely. We need to know how our partner best receives love. Is it through acts of service, words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, or maybe physical touch? Once we know their love language, we can tailor our actions to be even more meaningful.
I love that analogy of speaking the language that fills their love tank. But let's get practical. What are some communication techniques that can actually help de-escalate those heated arguments?
One technique that's surprisingly effective is called mirroring.
Mirroring. Does that mean I just repeat everything my partner says back to them like a parrot?
Haha, not exactly. It's more about reflecting back what you hear them saying, both their words and their underlying feelings.
So it's about making sure I'm truly understanding their message, not just their words, but what they're really feeling.
Right. It's about letting them know that you get it. You might say something like, what I'm hearing you say is that you feel hurt and disrespected because I didn't consult you before making plans. Is that right?
That makes so much sense. Often when we argue, what we really want is to feel heard and understood.
Exactly. And mirroring can help you avoid those communication traps like interrupting, getting defensive, or jumping into a counter argument.
It forces you to pause and really listen before reacting. I like that.
And after mirroring, you can try adding in validation.
Validation. Does that mean I have to agree with everything my partner says, even if I think they're being completely unreasonable?
Not at all. Validation doesn't mean agreeing. It just means acknowledging the validity of their feelings, even if you don't share them.
Okay, I see the difference.
You might say something like, I can understand why you're feeling that way, given your past experiences, even if you think their reaction is a bit over the top.
It's about saying, hey, I see you. I hear you. Your feelings are valid, even if I don't agree.
Exactly. And then, after validation, you can layer in empathy.
Okay, so we've got mirroring, validation, and now empathy. This is starting to feel like a communication tower.
And each element is important. Empathy is about connecting with your partner on an emotional level. It's about truly trying to feel what they're feeling.
So putting myself in their shoes and imagining how I would feel in that situation.
You got it. Empathy is like a superpower. It neutralizes blame and judgment and helps us see our partners not as the enemy, but as human beings who are doing the best they can.
We all make mistakes. We're all worthy of a little compassion, right?
Exactly. And remember, when you're using mirroring, validation, or empathy, sincerity is absolutely key.
So no fake or sarcastic tones allowed.
Haha, definitely not. Your partner can sense when you're not being genuine, and that's going to make things worse. Your words and tone need to convey authentic understanding and care.
Okay, I think I'm getting this. But what about those deeper conflicts that just keep popping up no matter how well we communicate? You know, the same arguments over and over again.
Those are often called perpetual problems by relationship experts. They're rooted in fundamental differences in values, needs, or personalities. things that can't easily be solved.
So like those classic conflicts about money, chores, or in-laws.
Exactly. Everybody's got them. Perpetual problems are less about finding a perfect solution and more about learning to manage those differences and create compromises that work for both partners.
It's about peaceful coexistence, not about one person winning the argument.
Exactly. And one of the most effective approaches to dealing with these perpetual problems is to explore what are called the dreams within conflict.
Dreams within conflict. That's an interesting way to put it. What does that even mean?
The idea is that underneath every conflict, even the most frustrating ones, there's a deeper longing, a dream that isn't being fulfilled.
So it's not really about the dirty dishes in the sink. It's about something much deeper.
Right. It might be a longing for connection, respect, freedom, or security. Think about the last time you and your partner had a big fight. What was the real issue at stake? What were you each yearning for?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm going to need to think about that one.
We all need to ask ourselves those questions. But how do we uncover those dreams within conflict in the first place?
Yeah, how do we get to that deeper level?
It takes open and honest communication and a willingness to truly listen. So instead of focusing on the surface level complaints, try asking each other questions like, what's most important to you in this situation? Or what are you hoping for?
So it's about understanding the underlying needs and desire.
Exactly. That can shift the whole dynamic of an argument. And sometimes those dreams within conflict can be connected to our childhood experiences, those early patterns we were talking about earlier.
It always comes back to those early patterns, doesn't it?
It often does. So it can be helpful to think about how those early experiences might be shaping your needs and expectations today. For example, if you grew up in a family where money was always tight, you might bring a lot of anxiety around finances into your adult relationships.
That makes a lot of sense. But even when we're really trying to communicate effectively, things can still get heated sometimes.
Definitely. It's like we revert to our primal instincts.
And that's where recognizing and managing that flooding we talked about becomes super important, right?
Absolutely. Self-soothing is your best friend in those moments.
Right. We talked about taking breaks when flooding occurs. What are some other ways to handle those moments when emotions are running high and we feel like we're about to lose it?
Well, finding ways to calm your nervous system and regulate your emotions is key. Deep breathing, mindfulness practices, taking a walk in nature, listening to soothing music. It's about whatever works for you to shift out of that fight or flight mode.
So it's about hitting that pause button on that emotional roller coaster.
Exactly. Remember, self-soothing isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about acknowledging and processing them so you can come back to the conversation in a calmer, more receptive state.
So it's not about pretending I'm not angry or hurt. It's about finding a healthy outlet for those emotions so they don't take over.
Right. And it's important to remember that self-soothing is an individual process. What works for you might not work for your partner.
So if my partner needs to go for a run to calm down and I need to listen to classical music, that's okay.
Totally okay. It's about respecting each other's coping mechanisms and giving each other the space they need.
That's so important. Sometimes we expect our partners to calm down in the same way that we do, and then we get frustrated when they don't.
And that just leads to more conflict. Remembering that we all process emotions differently can make a big difference.
Okay, we've got self-soothing down. What other tools can we use to navigate those rocky moments in an argument?
Sometimes self-soothing means taking a break from the conversation altogether.
Right, we talked about that. Sometimes it's just too heated to continue productively. But how do we do that without making things worse?
It's all about communicating clearly and respectfully. Instead of storming off, try saying something like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I need a little time to calm down. Can we come back to this in an hour?
So setting a specific time to revisit the conversation helps. It avoids that feeling of just sweeping things under the rug.
Exactly. And it shows your partner that you're committed to working through it, just not at this exact moment.
This is so helpful. I feel like I'm getting a crash course in how to handle arguments better.
And this is just the beginning. It's a journey, not a destination. And there's always more to learn when it comes to creating a fulfilling relationship.
I'm ready for more. What do we have in store for part 3 of this deep dive?
In the final part, we're going to go even deeper. We'll be talking about forgiveness, acceptance, compassion, and the power of connection.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I can't wait. See you all back here for part 3 of our deep dive into conflict resolution, brought to you by Resilient Couples Coaching. Welcome back, everyone. It's the final part of our deep dive into conflict resolution.
I'm so glad you're back with us.
Me too. We've covered so much already. From those unconscious patterns to communication skills and how to handle those superheated moments.
Yeah, we've really been laying the groundwork for creating a more peaceful relationship, haven't we?
We have. But I'm ready to go even deeper. What about those big picture things that create a truly fulfilling partnership?
I love that question. Let's start with forgiveness. It's absolutely essential.
Forgiveness, huh? That's a tough one, especially when you've been really hurt. I know I've struggled with it.
It's not easy, that's for sure. But forgiveness isn't about condoning what the other person did or pretending it didn't happen.
So it's not about sweeping things under the rug and letting them off the hook?
No, not at all. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from that resentment, that anger.
So it's more about me than them.
Exactly. It's about letting go of that bitterness so you can move on, whether you stay in the relationship or not.
So I can finally find some peace.
Yes. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Wow, that's a powerful way to put it. So forgiveness is about letting go so I can experience more joy.
You got it. And remember, it's a process, not a one-time thing. It takes time.
Makes sense. And forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean staying in a relationship that's unhealthy or unsafe, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes the most loving act is to walk away, but sometimes forgiveness is about creating a fresh start, a new beginning.
Seeing your partner with new eyes, acknowledging they can grow and change.
Beautifully said. And that brings us to another key element, acceptance.
Okay, acceptance. I'm sensing a theme here. Letting go of expectations and embracing reality.
Exactly. Acceptance doesn't mean you have to love everything about your partner or that you approve of all their behaviors.
Thank goodness.
It's about recognizing that they're human, with flaws and all, just like you.
Letting go of that fantasy of the perfect partner and appreciating who they really are.
Right, and that helps us let go of all that judgment and criticism. When we accept our partner, we give them space to grow.
Takes the pressure off everyone.
It does, but remember, acceptance doesn't mean tolerating hurtful behavior. Healthy boundaries and clear communication are still important.
So finding that balance between acceptance and standing up for myself.
Exactly, and realizing you can't force your partner to change. You can only focus on your own growth.
Letting go of that need to control.
And one of the most powerful ways to cultivate acceptance is through compassion.
Okay, compassion, I hear that word all the time, but what does it actually mean in a relationship?
It's about recognizing the suffering in yourself and others and responding with kindness and understanding.
So seeing my partner's struggles and mistakes with empathy, not judgment.
Exactly. Remembering that they, like you, are doing the best they can. We're all in this together.
Navigating this crazy hang called life.
Yes. And compassion is like an antidote to blame and shame. It helps us see each other as human beings, not enemies.
It's about creating a safe space for healing.
It's a beautiful way to put it. And it's not just about feeling sorry for someone. Compassion is about taking action to alleviate their suffering.
Like just listening or offering a helping hand.
Exactly. And it's a skill you can develop through mindfulness, meditation, or just making a conscious effort to see the good in others.
This is all so inspiring. It feels like a roadmap to a truly loving relationship.
And all of these qualities, forgiveness, acceptance, and compassion, they all stem from a deep sense of connection.
Connection, that's the heart of it, right? Feeling truly seen and understood by the person you love.
It is. And it's about being truly present with each other, actively listening, expressing affection, and doing things you enjoy together.
It's those everyday moments that weave the fabric of a relationship.
Right. Sharing meals, taking walks, having deep conversations. It's about staying curious about each other's inner world, nurturing that sense of intimacy.
That special spark.
And like a garden, connection needs constant nurturing to thrive.
What a journey this has been. We've explored so much, from those hidden patterns to the power of forgiveness, acceptance, and compassion.
It's been an honor to share this with you.
And we've learned that building a peaceful partnership isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about navigating disagreements with skill, turning them into opportunities for growth and connection.
Conflict can actually strengthen a relationship if we approach it with the right mindset.
It's so powerful to realize that those tough moments can lead to real transformation.
Exactly. And remember, it all starts within, with healing those old wounds and choosing compassion for yourself and your partner.
It's a journey of self-discovery, together and individually.
And remember, you're not alone. There are so many resources out there to support you. Books, articles, therapy. Resilient Couples Coaching is a great place to start if you're looking for guidance.
Definitely. And above all, never underestimate the power of love to heal and transform. When we approach our relationships with open hearts, anything is possible.
Beautifully said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into conflict regulation. May your relationships flourish.
Until next time, everyone, CCEC.
That's a wrap for this episode of Mastermind Conversations, a Pro Insights podcast powered by Geek in New York, where we don't just talk, we geek it. We hope you gain valuable insights, learn something new, and are ready to apply it in business and life. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us bring you even more great content. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and always geek it.